Welcome to Tales from the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Mick West. My guest today is Ryan. Now, Ryan will not get a very long introduction because I don't actually know that much about him. Ryan just joined Metabunk a few days ago, and he posted an introductory post which sounded very interesting about how he used to be a conspiracy theorist, and now he is not, or at least far less than he used to be. And so I invited Ryan on to Tales from the Rabbit Hole so we can talk about that. So Ryan, welcome.
Hi there, Mick. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just relaxing
Excellent.
today.
So Ryan, so you joined Metabunk a few days
Yeah.
ago. What actually prompted you to join Metabunk?
You know what? I with the recent all the recent UFO Pentagon release stuff. I guess I had one question that I just wanted to post on a video.
Right,
And so I did that basically just to ask a question, just a
right.
simple question.
So in your welcome post, you talked about how you used to be a conspiracy theorist. Can you describe essentially your origin story? Like what
Yeah.
actually started you out on this journey down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, my brother was pretty much always a skeptical guy, I guess you would say. He would believe most conspiracy theories, things of that nature. And one day, me and a friend were just hanging out in the basement, and he kind of asked us to check out a video, which was the Zeitgeist video, the first one. I don't know if he even hung around to watch us watch it or whatever it was, but he had us watch that. It shocked me. It was stuff that I never, I think I might have seen Loose Change
Hmm.
before it, but I didn't, I think I believed it, but it wasn't something about Zeitgeist hooked me. I think it might have been the religious aspect in the beginning of it and all that stuff, which I was kind of already on my way out of having a religious background, whatever. It's not a big deal, but the point by point of Zeitgeist kind of hooked me in. And from there, I just kind of believed it. I didn't,
Yeah.
I was young. I was young. I think I might have been 14, 15 at the time. So I didn't have the knowledge to go and fact check every single thing that was in there. I think it was just so much information coming at me all at once that I just was just believed it right off the bat without verifying any of the information.
So I think Zeitgeist is a very interesting movie because a lot of people cite that the two movies that you cite.
Yeah, loose changes like this. They're just. I think it's just the in-your-face nature of it. It's just all, and it is so much of it all at once coming at you with points that, if all the information was true, it's hard to come away with any belief other than that. But
Hmm.
whenever you really dig into it, a lot of it is just kind of misinformation, if not just outright lie kind of stuff. But at the time, like I said, I didn't have it in me to check it in, and not that I didn't have it in me, I just didn't
Yeah.
it didn't appeal to me. At that time, it's you're in on this big secret now that it's a conspiracy. You're in it, and it's just why would you at that point in time? Why bother checking the information out to make sure if it's accurate? It's so obvious when you see it, but why bother checking it?
So you basically so you were 14 years old. You were kind of a blank slate at the time, and then this
Yeah,
movie
pretty
comes
much.
along and just plonks itself down in your brain,
Yep.
and it almost sounds like it filled up all the space and didn't leave any room for any doubt beyond that.
Yeah, I would say that that's definitely a good way to put it. I didn't, when you're that young, you don't have political beliefs or beliefs about anything like that. So when you hear that it's possible that the government conspired to do all this stuff for whatever reason, to go into a war or whatever, but it's capable of killing a bunch of civilian citizens for the interest of themselves, it's kind of shocking to you, at that point, and almost like a secret that kind of deal like that.
So you didn't really have any kind of political knowledge before that? What was your kind of conception of how the government actually worked before you watched Zeitgeist?
It just was what you learned in school. I was just a regular student kid, average student that I just learned, the way the government worked in that way, but it never interested me. I
Hmm.
think my growing up political beliefs was always my parents aren't really overly political in their ways. And it just always seemed that any political talk outside of that just always led to just, bickering and arguments and stuff like that. So I usually just stayed away from it and I never got into it. And even now, that's almost the case now. It's kind of hard nowadays to say that you don't have a political stance. So obviously, you sway one way or the other. But, at the time, I was only 15. So it's not like politics were a big thing in my life at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I was 15, that was the kind of time I was kind of coming out of religion myself. I was raised Catholic.
Yeah,
And
me as well.
yeah, that's kind of interesting. I see a lot of Catholics who become conspiracy theorists. I think it seems disproportionate in a way, like the amount of Catholics.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah,
See, I didn't know that. I don't know what it is. I don't know if maybe I don't know. I don't really even have an idea why it could be that way.
that could be a misconception on my part, but
Maybe, yeah.
because
Just
obviously
maybe just an odd thing.
being a former Catholic myself, I'm particularly interested in people who are also former Catholics. My wife is a former Catholic. Maybe I'm drawn towards them. But anyway, yeah. So when I was 15, I was, coming out of being a Catholic, and I think I was kind of searching around for things in a way to replace that. Do you think there was any sense in which that was true? Like you had some kind of structure about the world from religion, and you were kind of losing this conventional religion, and did it replace it in any way for you?
I don't know. I don't think I would say that. I don't think so. No, I wouldn't say so. I think
Okay.
my coming out of religion thing just pretty much became from week after week after week. I would go to like we called it CCD, like a Sunday school thing, and I just it all started to get like really boring to me and really
Right.
disinteresting. And it like I just as you get older, it just kind of seems like stories and stuff like that. Not that like I'm not a guy that trashes on religion. If anyone wants to be religious, whatever, anything like that, by all means, I don't hate on it by at all. But just for me, it just was like this just kind of seems like weird stories or whatever.
Yeah.
So I never no, I wouldn't say that I'd ever like would try to replace it. I think it was just I think the best way you said is kind of like just a blank mind that was kind of never thought about that kind of stuff, and that kind of pushed me to start believing in that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm interested though in your political. Obviously, you say you learned stuff in school. So you
Yeah.
learn like I suppose they'd make you watch the How a Bill is Made cartoon and things
Yeah,
like
stuff.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. Just your basic stuff, the branches of government and that kind of stuff.
And you knew that Bush was president.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
did you remember thinking about the president before Bush? I remember when I
Um,
was young, there was like Thatcher was the prime minister, and then there was the person before Thatcher, I think Callahan, I can't remember exactly, and it's kind of like I have no idea what went on when I
That's an
was actually
interesting question.
growing
Yeah, I
up.
never thought of that. Yeah, I think I was, when would a Clinton? When would he have been? I feel like I like Clinton was like there, but I was pretty young. I would have been pretty young at the time. Because what was it, 2000, right? Yeah, I would have been 9 at the time of the 2000 election. So it's like at that point in time, like, yeah, the name Clinton, Bill Clinton, and you probably heard about a scandal or anything like that, but I would have been too young to even know anything like that. So yeah, I guess that's a good point. Like Bush would have been like the first president that you for sure remember
Yeah.
for the majority of my life at the start of it.
Yeah, it's like political awareness just arises in young people at a certain age. Before that, there's nothing. So it's almost like you were the ideal time to catch you by watching Zeitgeist at age 14, 15. It would be
Yeah,
interesting to,
that's for sure. I would agree with that for sure.
yeah,
Especially, and then it's your first introduction into it as like such a negative connotation to it because it's just like, oh, this is what the government's capable of. Not that I mean, it's one way or the other. You either believe that the government's great, it's a mix, I guess. But if that's your first initial introduction into like, hey, this is what your government's capable of, you're going to kind of have a skeptical eye of it from the beginning, I would say.
how would you contrast these two movies? It's very famous in the conspiracy sphere, like 9/11 movies that got people into 9/11 conspiracy theories. On the one hand, you have Zeitgeist, which kind of blends in stuff about the money supply and
Yeah,
the religion and kind of strange, like esoteric things,
yeah,
like the Egyptian sun god and things like that.
yeah.
And then you've got
Yeah,
Loose Change, which is a more conventional type of thing, where it's mostly saying, look at these puffs of smoke, and
things
why
like
wasn't this
that.
person on this list? It's all very straightforward.
Yeah,
Did you, and you watched them
yeah.
both more or less at the same time?
I think so. I'm pretty sure I saw Loose Change first, but I can't. It's such a long time ago, and it's been such a long time since I've seen the videos. I did a little like refresher on like the 9/11 aspect of Zeitgeist, but you're dead on that because the Zeitgeist part, I remember like the religion part was appealing to me at the beginning of it just because of that exact thing where I'm like coming out of it, and then it's like this reassurance of like, yeah, Christianity is like a bunch of BS, whatever, that kind of stuff. So like that part kind of, it was almost like confirmation at that point, but it didn't push me one way or the other. It just was like, yeah, that's kind of how already all I feel. And then the 9/11 part was like, whoa, look at this, But the money part at the end, I don't know if I was just like too young to even comprehend it at the time, or it gets kind of just weird at that. Like all that part was just kind of kind of out there. I think it kind of like lost interest, and that could be an age thing. I don't know, but yeah. And then, like you said, yeah, loose change is just kind of like more. You don't want to say fact based, but like more like as far as like if the factual information was true in it and whatnot. That's just like in your face stuff that kind of hits you in that regard. So they're as similar as they are. There's definitely differences in how they're presented. That's for sure.
So what happens next after you watch these two movies? You're 14, 15 years old. You start to believe in 9/11, and then you start talking to your friends about it.
Yeah, like it's weird. I can't seem to now. I have to talk to my friend. I still talk to the friend that I watched it with all the time, but I can't really remember what his initial takeaway of it was at the time. You know, I think he might have been a little more like not ready to believe everything that you see on the internet kind of thing at the time. Whenever I was just kind of like fully in on it, so I don't really remember much about what he believed initially. I think he came away with it just a little skeptical, but he might have been like just bored at the end of it as well. And you know, it was a lot of information, so maybe we never really like chatted too much on it. But coming out of it, yeah, I'm not like a guy that, because I think I know that it's a strange belief at the time, that I didn't really like come right out the next day like, oh, look what I learned like last night. You know, I'm not the kind of guy that would do that anyway. I don't want to like completely like train stop a conversation and then go in a completely different direction like that. But if something would come up, like, yeah, I would present it that way. But I typically just kind of kept it as like a secret inside that maybe I talked about to my mom and dad and everything like that. But it wouldn't say that I was like a openly proud conspiracy theorist in a way, if that makes sense. Like, not that I would say that I felt like, it just felt like it would, like, I didn't want to broach it out there because I might be seen as like a person that has some crazy beliefs or anything like that.
So this was like, what, 2005, 6, something like that?
I would say, well, I think Zeitgeist came out in 2007. So if I had to guess, I would say I saw it around the beginning of it, if I had to guess. So I would say like probably, you know, late 2007, 2008 to 2012, maybe somewhere in that ballpark for 4 or 5 years.
And how did you see it? Was it on the internet or was it on a DVD?
Yeah, I'm going to guess it was a YouTube video, would be my guess. I think it was on YouTube, like free to see, if I remember. I'm almost positive. If not, maybe it was like on like Daily Motion or one of those sites that like you're just kind of able to see videos on. But yeah, it's just straight off the internet, right on our computer in our basement.
So you see it on the internet. Now, were you on the internet in other ways, like on Facebook or things like that at the time?
At that time, I don't remember when MySpace was. I don't know if that would have been a MySpace thing or a Facebook thing. Yeah, I was on it at the time, but not. I'm not a guy that like does that. Like, just isn't like a real openly out there guy. Like, yeah, I had Facebook and all that stuff, but I was more just kind of stuck to myself. I played computer games and stuff like that, and on the internet in that way. But I wouldn't say that I was like all over Facebook and stuff like that.
So when you brought up things like 9/11, say at school, how do people react to your beliefs?
I think that might have been a reason why I kind of got pushed out of it, because I was never really met with too many people that like were like, oh, really, like really receptive to it. Like a lot of people, at least from what I remember, is just were kind of like, really, that's kind of like, that's strange. Why would they do it? Stuff like that. And then as people pushed back on me a little bit more as to like the why and things like that, I started to realize like maybe I didn't fill in the information as to why it happened too much. And I'm sure the answers were out there that I could, or the answers were out there that I could have got if I looked into it. But I guess whenever I started to get pushed back on it and people like were kind of just like, I don't know about that. I think that's whenever I kind of like didn't want to make it openly out there. The more that I talked about it, and the more people that were like not receptive towards it, it kind of made me like not persuade my beliefs one way, but more like just made my beliefs more to me.
Yeah. So what do you think would have happened had you, let's say, had a friend who was a big conspiracy theorist who was kind of
interesting point,
talking to you about it?
That's an interesting point, because like I said, my brother, he still is elite, like he still believes a lot of that stuff. And but I don't know why we never I don't know why it's something that we always wonder, is how we're so different. We watch the same things, everything like that, but we ended up on complete opposite spectrums, how I don't want to say came out of it like thinking logically or whatever, because it has a negative connotation, I guess, but not really. But I don't know. That's a good question. I've never given it much thought. It's much in the same way that the internet kind of has given you, if you believe in conspiracy theories, you go on the internet, make a post about it, and a lot of people will believe it, and it kind of reinforces your idea. But for me, since I didn't have that, maybe it helped me kind of guide it way out, in the same regard that if I had a group of 3 or 4 friends that were like, oh, really, what's the video? And whatever, and we sat down and watched it or whatever, then maybe it would have created just the kind of the same thing that you get online, but in real life, which probably reinforces your beliefs even more at that point, if it's like friends that you've always known.
Yeah. Is your brother like an older brother?
He's an older brother, like 30, 31, I think.
So your brother now is a conspiracy theorist, would you say?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
What types of conspiracy theories is he into nowadays? Has it changed over the years?
Yeah, I don't know so much about like current conspiracy theories, but I know that he still would believe 9/11 100%. I've never got him to sit down and go like point by point by point by point on what he believes, that this happened, this happened, this happened. I just know that he's just I guess you would say like he's a pretty, I don't want to say like anti-establishment type, but like if somebody says do something, like whatever, like as far as government authority, parents even, he would kind of not do it, but just kind of like almost not want to do it in a way. So he's kind of always been like anti-government kind of type. So even if you break down like the points and the fallacies within the what he would believe, cool, maybe he wouldn't believe those, but it might just push him to latch onto another belief, or he would still at least be like, well, yeah, but the government is still capable of doing this or doing that kind of thing like that. So yeah, I don't know. I think I vaguely remember him trying to push. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that I remember him talking about Pizzagate to my parents one time or something like that, which is, that actually got me to see Pizzagate, and I think that probably was like the final push that pushed me completely out of like conspiracy theory territories. Whenever you see that, and you just see how like, just I don't know, how kind of weird it is. I get when I say just weird, I mean weird in like such a that there's so little information that's like easily verified on it.
It's really interesting that you say that Pizzagate was the final push. Because Pizzagate was about, what, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, I would say 2017, 2018, somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah. So it's pretty recent. So I mean, you've kind of been down the rabbit hole to one degree or another for a really long time.
Yeah. So I would say what really like started the push out, and when I say like started, I mean like that really got me like mostly out of it would be was Sandy Hook. Like whenever Sandy Hook came up, I vividly remember like looking at it and looking at conspiracies online of it and just going, I don't. Like this, some of this stuff isn't adding up, and on these sites, and I wish that I could remember what sites I was going on or whatnot, but I don't know. But there was thankfully like there was one soul on there that was like not debunking it on the spot, but just being like, hey, this isn't accurate at all, like, and just linking it and sourcing it and everything like that, almost like point by point by point. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I don't know if like right after that is whenever I kind of like maybe started to think like maybe this could be done with the same like 9/11 things, like. But it definitely was like that was a good push out of it. And I would say like, whenever I did, eventually I would say it was probably somewhat soon after that is whenever I was like, okay, well, if that's how like easily disproven or at least easily discredited stuff about Sandy Hook can be, I wonder if the same thing can be done with like 9/11. So then I kind of went and did that research, I would say shortly after. And when I did that, it kind of like brought that whole thing to a crumble where I almost not felt like ashamed, but I just felt like kind of dumb that I didn't like bother to even look into it. And that I think is like the foundation of when I was like, okay, I'm kind of out of conspiracy theories. But like, if I read a good one or something like that, maybe I believe it. But then the Pizzagate happened and I was just like, okay, I just like everything at this point can just be a conspiracy theory if you just post it on the internet. Like right. like the Wayfarer one, these ones that just came out. It's just like, whoa, this is literally just some guy said, hey, look at this, and then it becomes a countrywide phenomenon. Like
the Wayfarer one, that's the furniture catalog thing where they say it's got coded messages about hidden like children who had been abducted.
Well, it's not even coded. It's the names of the cabinets, like how like if you go to
Right.
IKEA and
Yeah.
it's some like Swedish name of a cabinet or whatever like that. But basically on the site it was just a name, and it's just every name, not and it's probably not every name. I didn't look too far into it because it's so far fetched. But it's like most of the names were names that were on like child abduction lists and stuff like that. But it's just simple as like there's how 250,000 kids abducted each year, and that's just a year. Like of course you pick a name and
Yeah.
it's going to be on the list. And that's not even saying that some of the people that were abducted were found. Like there was like 3 or 4 of them that were just found and they're fine. And they're like, okay, I guess I'm abducted now and I'm for sale.
Yeah, I think most of the kids who are abducted in the large number statistics that's given are usually abducted by family members, and it's usually something like a divorce situation where it's a custody dispute. It's actually
Yeah,
a
exactly.
pretty small number of kids who are abducted by strangers. I think it's in the
Yeah,
hundreds rather than the hundreds of thousands.
it's such a weird one, and it's one of the ones where it's like it's just you just it goes to show you what it goes back to like the internet thing. It's like it's just like if
Hmm.
you could find something on the internet, post it, and enough people believe it, and now it gains traction. And look what it did. I mean, it made like news. Like it's just like it's crazy. And then Wayfair, to their discredit, didn't do the best job. They kind of just came out and was just like, yeah, this isn't true, but they didn't like really do the best job in explaining it. But at the same time, why did they have to? Like it's like
Yeah,
such a illogical conclusion to make, and so much of it is so like easily discredited. But
that's kind of a struggle I have sometimes is when someone makes a truly outlandish claim, is it actually worth the effort in trying to debunk it? Because by addressing it as a serious claim,
yeah,
or not even as serious as an actual claim, it almost like draws attention to something that should have just been left to die in the darkness.
exactly. Which thankfully, like you don't hear it really now because I think that was only like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you don't really hear too much about it now. So I think it kind of just was like pretty easily like people were like, okay, that one was we probably went a little bit too far on that one, but it should go show to some conspiracy theorists like how easily information can just be put out there without having to be fact checked, without having to be
Yeah.
verified, and then you just believe it. People believe it.
So you mentioned in your post on Metabunk how with the 9/11 conspiracy theory there are these there's various levels of extremeness, and one of the ones is that there are no planes involved in 9/11 and that
Yeah,
the footage was faked.
yeah, yeah. There's definitely a spectrum to conspiracy theories. I mean, and you even talk about it in your book, but there's like just people that think, and this would be fall on my mom would be the person that's like, just kind of like, yeah, I mean, it definitely isn't like a conspiracy theory, but I feel like the government might have had like a little bit of warning that they could have like done better
Right.
to prevent it kind of thing. Which I wouldn't say is outlandish or far fetched in any sort of way. And then you have people that are completely on the other side where there's no planes. It's all CGI animation and things like that. And that didn't. I wouldn't say that. I think that I might have ran into like beliefs like that as I kind of already stopped believing. But then, like as you start to see that, you're kind of like, holy shit! You had people on that side of it that think that. It's just weird. It's weird that you have people that just go all up and down the spectrum there.
So do you think like this exposure to more extreme conspiracy theories, like or extreme versions of them, is actually helpful or was helpful to you in helping
To
you get
me at
out?
least, yeah, I would say to me at least, for sure. I would say yeah, for sure. When you see like the Sandy Hook stuff, and you see that there's people that believe such outlandish things, that yeah, I would say that it goes, oh wow, I'm believing in this, but you have people that believe in this. Where where does it stop? Like where does it stop? Like if information gets like discredited outright, and you just instead of like taking it and going, that's interesting, maybe I might be wrong on it, you instead double down and go a step further. Well, okay, maybe it is that, but maybe it's actually this, and you just go deeper down it. It kind of pushed me to be like, man, is there no way that maybe you're wrong? You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it just seems like it just seems interesting to me that it always goes a step further. I'm not always, I don't want to say always, but some people will just go a step further to the not crazier side, but the more illogical side, than taking a step back and maybe trying to see if everything is factually accurate.
Yeah, it almost seems like there's a bit of momentum in belief. Like if you start believing more and more in one direction, then you kind of continue. But if you can actually start to question something, you can actually kind of unroll the snowball and kind of come back in the other direction. And
For sure.
you personally would have, maybe initially had this momentum in one direction with a big push from watching these movies, and that carried you forward for a number of years. But then at some point, it slowed to a stop, and then started to go back the other way.
Yeah, I would say that that's completely how it was for sure. It definitely slowed to a stop, and I don't know if that was just maybe I just got busy and like it's not like I kept up on them. I wouldn't go online every day and look at the newest conspiracy theory or anything like that. I think it was just more I just kind of believed what I believed, but I never went and like looked at what new conspiracy theories were around the time. So maybe it's not that I got disinterested into them because it's still something that's very interesting to me, one way or the other. Now it's more so like looking at it and just going, that's interesting that people can just believe whatever comes out, in that regard. But at the time, I just got I don't know. Maybe I was preoccupied with other stuff in my life that it kind of slowed down for me, and then. Or maybe I just got more, I don't want to say more intelligent because it sounds pretentious, but just more ready
You got older.
to.
Your
Yeah,
brain developed
exactly.
and become more sophisticated.
That's probably the best way of looking at it. Seeing that maybe what I believed as a kid isn't accurate.
Yeah, and I think also it's not just simply getting more intelligent, it's actually having more information. As you get older, you have more and more context in which to place things.
Yeah,
Whereas, like we were saying before, it's kind of you're a blank slate because you don't have any context. You have your childhood, which is very focused around just, you and your family and school and friends and things like that. And you don't really care about the news. I remember when I was a kid, I thought the news was the most boring thing on television.
It puts me to sleep. I think I think my parents, if I was like still up at night and in the living room, they know put on the news and I'll be in bed.
Yeah,
it's for me.
To a young child, preteen, it's just completely opaque, boring nonsense. The news, you don't understand what's going on. So you're kind of coming out of that thing, and then the news kind of becomes interesting. And then you have this big chunk of news in the form of zeitgeist and loose change being thrown on you, and you get swept in the wrong direction.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, so, it is. It really is.
Like around that time, like 2000, 5, 6, 7, like mid to late 2000s, this was kind of a big time for conspiracy theories. There was the the 9/11 conspiracy theory. There was also the chemtrails conspiracy theory. Do you remember hearing about chemtrails back then, say around 2007-ish?
Never, ever. I never heard it. I think the first exposure I had to chemtrails was actually just on Metabuck one time. I think I just like one of my first times that I was on it because, like I said, I was like a lurker for a while. I don't even know how I stumbled on it. I think one time like it might have been just a 9/11. It might have even if there was like any Pizzagate topics on there, that might have been like the first time that there probably was. So that probably would have been like the first time that I went on it. And then from there, I probably just hit like, what's new or whatever and saw like a chemtrail thing. And I was just like, what? This is weird. So I click on it and just like, I don't know. It's just such a strange one to me. But no, I never really got exposed to that one. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get that reaction when I ask a lot of non-conspiracy people, have you heard of chemtrails? And a lot of people are like, what? Chemtrails? What are you talking about? And it's interesting to hear someone who was like, kind of a hardcore 9/11 conspiracy theorist who hadn't actually heard about it.
Oh no, I did not at all. I actually brought it up recently to my mom and dad to see if they ever heard of it. And I mean, they're pretty on the fringe of conspiracy theories. They never even heard it. So it's kind of that's one that's kind of out there, I think. But at the same time, it's not like, I mean, it's I don't know. It's just one of those things where if you see them in the sky, you're just like, you've probably seen them your whole life, but then eventually somebody might be like, hey, did you know that could be chemicals or whatever? And you're just like, what? I just assumed it was just some sort of error or something like that.
Yeah, it's so were there other conspiracy theories that you were aware of or that you believed in around that time?
JFK was the one that you just always in school you always would see. I think we watched JFK. That's what the movie was called. It was just called JFK, right? The Oliver Stone.
Oliver Stone. Yeah.
We watched that in school. Probably 10th grade or whatever age you are around that time. We watched that in school.
Wow.
Yeah, it seems like a weird one to watch now that I think about it.
Yeah, because
we had this weird class in school that was just like a straight up movie class. Like it was. It usually had like some sort of historical context to it, but it was like over the course of a week you watch a movie and then like the last 2 days after, like it might take 3 days to watch a movie, and the last 2 days it's like a homework and a test on the movie, like kind of thing like that. So it was a cool. I mean, everyone loved that class because you literally just watched movies.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it was in that class or maybe another class that was similar to it that we watched that. So that one was one that was always like interesting to me. Like it was just like, oh, that's interesting. I never really went down like a full like believe it or not believe it thing with that. I don't know. I would think that's really like the extent of it.
You're a 9/11 guy.
Yeah, kind of pretty much. I would say so. I would say that it was mostly like a 9/11 thing was kind of like, since that was the introduction to me, it was like things that happened before that, minus JFK because it's such like a big one, that I don't think that it was really much before that.
The JFK thing's interesting to me because I remember watching JFK a long time ago. When you just watch the movie, it's very compelling. And it seems like they're making all these great cases, but then if you look into it later, it's got a bunch of nonsense in it, like the whole magic bullet theory, where he says the bullet would have had to change direction in midair, when in fact it didn't have to do it because of the way they were sitting in the car. So there's all these things in the movie which are just blatantly false. And now I think Oliver Stone is coming out with something else. He was just on the Joe Rogan show.
I was going to say he was just on Rogan, but I did not get a chance to see it. I kind of have not stopped watching Rogan recently, but just haven't had the time really.
And it's interesting. Oliver Stone, he was talking about these old claims as if they were still true. In a way, it seemed like he has got stuck in this belief. Like he was saying, there was no way you could have pulled off 3 shots in that time, and there's no way even an expert marksman could have hit 2 out of 3 shots.
Yeah, that's something I think Rogan talked about with you. That was like, you could definitely hit the shot.
Yeah,
like, it's definitely possible to hit the shot. It's interesting. Maybe no one's ever in his life like been like, hey man, like what's going on? Like
it's Oliver Stone.
He just might have just
You would think he's an accomplished director who obviously did some research for his movie back in the day, like 20 plus years ago, and you'd think he would know. So maybe just everyone assumes that he's done his research, but it really doesn't seem like he has. It seems like he doesn't really know what he's talking about, and yet he's in a position to push this conspiracy theory forward. Even Joe Rogan was correcting him on things.
Really? That's funny. I need to see it though, because that's always interesting when that happens.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Joe's kind of a bit of a believer nowadays.
Yeah, I see that.
Rolled back a bit.
It's the UFOs have hooked them back in.
It's the UFOs.
I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, I get it for people. I'm not one that's gonna be one. UFO. If somebody believes in them or not. I mean, there is not evidence, but it's like it's stuff that's at least interesting, I mean? But to be hooked back in, and I mean, it's different if you're believing because you just believe because it's a lot out there, kind of thing like that. But if you're taking the advice of like of Bob, is it Lazar? It's Lazar, right? Bob Lazar and stuff like that. There's a lot of just sketchy information that comes out of that. It's just it kind of. But I mean, who knows? He met the guy. Who knows what they talked about and whatnot? It could be a completely different thing whenever you meet and talk to the guy, and you maybe kind of just get hooked back in, I mean, obviously I don't know Joe Rogan at all, but he always seems to have like a pretty active mind,
No, well, I've been on the Joe Rogan show 3 times now, and I was on some other thing with him. He's a smart guy, but he really likes these topics. So he likes UFOs, he likes Bigfoot, and I think he just wants them to be true.
I think that's it too, and I mean, whatever, I mean, people want to do that way. That's fine. I mean, if you want it to be true, it's fine. It's just unfortunate you have such like a big platform and you push it out there. Like, I don't know. It's hard to say that he pushes it out there. He just more so has the people on and talks about it.
He lets other people, talk about it.
Yeah, so it's not like he's pushing it with an agenda. And, I mean, at the end of the day, he's just talking to people, and of course it's going to come off like he's pushing it out there that way. But
Hmm.
I don't know. It's interesting to
Well,
see.
we'll
That's
see.
for
Maybe
sure.
you'll have me on
Yeah,
again, and
yeah.
I
I
can
mean,
I
who
can
knows?
set him
It's one
straight.
of those things that you never know when information comes out. You never know. It's one of those things that it's like, yeah, I mean, but it seems
UFOs could be real. I mean, that's the thing. Like, we could we
100%.
could have alien spaceships flying around, but the evidence really isn't very good. The blurry videos and whatnot.
Yeah, I saw
That's what
that's
I have a
post
problem with.
one of your comments on Twitter. Someone made like a funny thing that I never thought about, but it was like it's like the only thing more silly than thinking like that we're the only people out of all the universe is thinking that some people millions and millions of miles away care about like what's so special about us that they're coming to visit us just to look at us or observe
Yeah.
us. You know what I mean? And I thought about it. I was like, that's an interesting point. Like I've never really thought about like why are they if they're not coming here to like if they want to come just come and do whatever you know what I mean whatever it is like I mean whatever. But if you're just coming to like watch us, what's so special about us? Or not doing
Yeah.
anything.
I think it's kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier. Like, you're talking about how you were, 14, 15, and you got into this zeitgeist and conspiracy theory stuff. It's also the kind of age that people like get into UFOs. I mean, when I was a kid, I was into UFOs and the unexplained and things like that. And I wonder if like some people kind of get this momentum going. Like you're saying, you had the momentum of the conspiracy theories, and you just keep going along that direction. And if people get into UFOs in their teens, it almost seems like it's just that same kind of teenager enjoyment of a
For
topic that,
sure.
that keeps going into their adulthood.
For sure. I'm actually surrounded by it. I would say my best friend, his girlfriend, my mom, dad, my brother. My brother is like a firm UFO guy. He's seen them a bunch of times, everything like that. It just seems like such an easy one to believe, which like it's one of those ones that's like there's really no harm in it because it's like 9/11 pushing that stuff out, that gets a little bit weird. But
Yeah,
like UFO, if you want to believe it's kind of like a not a religious thing, but it's like, if you want to believe in that, there's not really like
it
a
is.
harm to it kind of thing. It's just frustrating whenever your evidence is like shaky videos at best and things of that nature. Like that gets a little bit weird, but the core of it, I get.
Yeah, I think it is mostly harmless, in the same way that most religious beliefs are mostly harmless. I mean, the
Yeah,
problem that would
exactly.
only come is if it actually impacts real world decisions. There's
Exactly.
there's a few $1 million being spent on government research because some
Good
people
point.
in,
Yeah.
in government want to, are interested in UFOs, and so they kind of push one aspect of it and
Good
maybe
point.
kind of hijack other things where the military is doing research into unidentified airspace incursions and things like that, and so they kind of spin it as being alien UFOs,
Yeah. It's
directly
always
or
alien.
indirectly.
Always alien.
Well, they say not, the people who are UFO
Right.
fans, because they realize that that if people think they're being silly, they're not going to listen to them. So in the same way that the chemtrail people, they reframe it as being geoengineering rather than
Yeah.
chemtrails. It's just people doing geoengineering. It's real science. Look at this. And the
Yeah.
UFO people, they have to say, well, we're not saying it's aliens. We're just saying it's some kind of unusual craft. That surely that should be a problem that we should investigate. And yeah,
Yeah. That's
sure
a
it
good point.
should.
Yeah. Yeah.
With 9/11, they try to frame it as being not. Oh, we don't think that the towers were deliberately blown up. We're not saying that. We're just asking questions as to
Just
why
asking
does it
questions.
look like
Yeah.
the towers were deliberately blown up. So they never
Yeah. I
make any
think I,
specific claims.
I think I remember I think it was a post that you made one time that was like people compare it and say like, look at all the buildings that have been hit by a plane or been on fire before and they don't burn down. But it's true in the regard that you've never had a situation like 9/11. You never had a plane
Yeah,
crash full speed into a building full of fuel and burn for, it's just something that's never happened. The only thing was, the one that came, where was that at? Iran or Iraq? The one that just came out a few,
yeah, the
with the
the Plasco building.
Glasgow, yeah, that
Yeah,
building, that was funny in its own right that they kind of had to re-inform their beliefs if you believed in that regard. But whenever like you're right. I mean, it's never happened before, so it's hard to say that it looks weird. Of course, it looks weird because it's the first time it's ever happened. You know what I mean?
yeah, and again, it's the momentum thing. Like the they say that World Trade Center Building 7 collapsed And they can't believe it was a fire because it just seems impossible. The way it collapsed looked too straight down and it was too fast. So they just can't believe it. So it must have been controlled demolition. And so they do all this cherry-picking research, try to demonstrate that it's controlled demolition, that it was pre-planted explosives. And they even paid like some professor in Alaska to do this study, which was a terrible study, but it's far too complicated to get into. They try to frame it all as like being actual science that they're doing, when it's more a progression of their belief, the momentum that has carried them forward, and they're just piling one thing upon the other.
They start with the idea that they're right and work backwards instead of like confirming.
Well, they almost work forwards in a way, and that they build a more and more convoluted belief structure by tacking these things on here and there.
That's a good way to phrase it, for sure.
So, have you been following any of the current conspiracy theories, like the coronavirus being fake?
Yeah, I'm following it. I mean, it's impossible to not talk or hear somebody that believes that it's not real or whatever like that. Not follow. I wouldn't say I follow it. I think, like I said, I think the Wayfair thing was like the most common, the recent one that I've seen. That's kind of one. That's where my brother doesn't think that it's straight up fake, but he thinks it's just the numbers are a little bit sketchy and things in that regard.
Yeah, I just heard that Herman Cain died today of coronavirus.
I read that this morning too.
An interesting thing, and he just attended a rally. I'm just wondering if this again, we're talking about momentum. There's kind of a huge motivation in a way not to believe that it's as serious as people are saying, because it's become this political issue.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what will it take for people to realize that it is actually serious?
It's a
people to actually have to get it.
Yeah, it's literally at that point where it's like you have to get it. But the part about that is, or you at least know somebody that's close that you get it. But if you have like a young person that's like 35, 30 years old, 35 years old, and they have a friend that gets it or whatever, and their friend bounces back and completely just fine,
which is most people would do.
Yeah, right, exactly. Then it just reaffirms their belief. Oh, okay, well then it's nothing. It's nothing. But it doesn't mean anything. And plus, it's like we don't even know the long-term effects. How many? I mean, you read it more and more each day now that there's just perfect. I think there's like a perfectly healthy, in shape, one of like the best baseball pitchers in the world. I can't remember what team it's on, but I read it that it's like he's like not struggling, but he has some really bad effect. I mean, there's really bad lingering effects with this virus that. Yeah, it might not kill however many people, but there is people that do have some complications, which is just easy enough to just be like, hey, just don't push it that it's nothing. It's something, and whether it's as serious or whatever the situation is, just take it seriously. I mean, none of them would want to go out and get it, even if they believe that it's completely 100% fake. I guarantee you none of them would want to try it and go and get it. You know what I mean? But then you hear about the parties of people that do try to get it, so then I don't know.
Is there anybody around you who's like anti-mask, who thinks that the masks don't work?
You
don't have to name names, but
yeah, kind of. Or maybe not works. That maybe it's just not 100% necessary or whatever. Which is just I mean, it's literally nothing, man. Just put a mask on. It's not hard.
I agree. All right. Well, that's been a very interesting conversation. I really, appreciate you kind of sharing your journey, because it's such a well encapsulated one. I think so you can see like the beginning, and you can see how you progressed through it, and how you kind of gradually came out of it. How long would you say you were like kind of solidly in it before you started having to?
If I had to say, I would say like 4 or 5 years. 4, 5, 6 years, somewhere in that regard, that I was solidly in it. Like I said, I wasn't gonna attend a rally or anything like that. But definitely for sure, 100% believed that there was. You know what I mean? I mean, I was, I think there was like a rapper at the time that came out with like some songs that were like just in it was like Bush knocked down the tower, like had like a whole thing about it. Like and I heard that, I was like, yeah, and it was one of my like favorite rappers at the time. I was like, oh man, like. It kind of just like was like, dang, this is cool. Like even one of my favorite rappers like is in on it. Not in on it, but like believes like it. We have the same idea. You know what I mean? So it's like I was definitely a firm believer for a decent amount of time. Young too.
What do you think would have helped you out quicker?
boy, I just getting accurate information. You know what I mean? Like it would have taken me to sit
How would you
down.
get that information
That's
there?
what I was
Like,
gonna say.
you're not going to go out and look for it.
No, exactly. So, I don't know. I don't know. That's what I was gonna say. Is like the getting accurate information would have been it, but I'm not gonna go and look at it. You know.
Who would you have trusted back then if someone came to you and said, "Hey, like this, this study shows the towers actually fell due to fire and gravity." Would you trust anybody around you at that time enough
Yeah, I
to
don't.
look at this
I
new
would definitely
information?
have trusted people, but I don't know if I would have just. I would have probably just did the normal conspiracy theory thing that was like, oh, okay, that's cool, that's interesting, but what about like just moved on to the next. Like it's just that's how it always is. Like at least when I have like this conversation with my brother, because I've had a conversation with my brother, like, and it just always moves on to the like it's like you might break a little bit of ground and be like, no, this is why this point is completely inaccurate, and then it's like, okay, but what about this point? And it just kind of goes in like this spiral where you can't actually you could kind of start to break through on certain topics, but then it just switches to another one. And then since you might not be as educated in that topic, it kind of just then the other stuff is just like, okay, that's still true then. It never actually really breaks through. It's tough.
Do you want to, I don't know, convert your brother, help him out the rabbit hole? Do you think would it be a good thing?
I mean, it's weird. It's like it's a twofold thing. Like, sure, yeah, of course, but at the same time, like it's kind of just like, you know, it's who he is now. You know what I mean? It's who
Right.
he is now. It's kind of just like he's not out there doing any harm. Like yeah, it's a belief that maybe he has that isn't accurate, or that I wish that he would just like sit down and read more information and see why some of what he believes is accurate. But at the same time, like I mean, the fair point of like the government is capable of things that aren't exactly true. It's like there's like not a healthy side to conspiracy theory, but people can't just take everything at face value for what it is. At the same time, that I don't want to put like, yeah, I'd like to push him out of it, but I don't want him. I don't know. It's tough to explain.
Do you think there's a risk if you start like trying to argue with him more, then it might be like alienated a bit, or
No, I don't
you've
think so. I don't think
got a strong
that
enough
would
relationship?
Yeah, yeah. We it's actually a conversation we just had within the last week or so. That just talking about it, just because talking about coronavirus and stuff like that. It's like we'll argue about it or whatever, but it just we're just all right. Well, all right. We just agree to disagree and then move on to talking about whatever. But it's tough. It's tough. It's like I would like to try, but it's just he's pretty emotional whenever it comes to it, and I can be too. Like not emotional, but just like just passionate about it because
It gets
it's
angry.
I wouldn't say angry, but yeah. I mean, not angry, just gets a little worked up. So it's hard to have like that, like all right, settle down and have a conversation about just have a point by point conversation about it and things like that. It's tough.
I don't suppose he would be interested in coming on the podcast, would he?
Probably, he probably would be.
It would be interesting. Maybe you could ask him, and we could see. It would be an interesting contrast.
Yeah.
Two brothers.
I'm sure that he would. I don't see why he wouldn't.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, I could absolutely let you know for sure.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because you've got this shared history and your shared exposure to certain things and a different outcome. It would be very interesting to kind of talk about that and talk about what might bring him out, or what's keeping him in, or what he thinks about me. Am I a government shill and things like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I like I said, I mentioned him that I was like coming on. I don't know if you knew who you were, or whatever. I just mentioned it, and but we were both big Tony Hawk fans growing up,
Right.
and I like gigantic, and I was like, dude, this is like the guy that helped make Tony Hawk, So so he knew that, and I mentioned that you were on Joe Rogan or whatever, so he knew that. I don't know. I think he wouldn't think that you're a shill or anything, and I mean, who knows? I don't want to say what he would think one way or the other, but. I don't know. It would for sure be interesting. That's for sure.
All right. Well, maybe we can talk about that offline and
yeah, absolutely, for sure.
see what we can do. All right, Ryan, I want to thank you very much for this very interesting conversation.
Yeah, cool.
And I hope that people will get some interesting perspective from this, and
yeah, I hope so.
Think a bit more about their own history and their own beliefs and things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.